Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Makers and Methods from Austin Community College's Drama Department. I'm very excited here to have Joe Kelley and Simone Alexander, and we're going to talk about ACC's latest production. So Simone, we'll start with you. If you could just introduce yourself and tell us about your role.
Yeah, totally. Hi, I'm Simone Alexander. I use she, her pronouns, and I was the director of Iphigenia at ALIS.
Hello, my name is Joe Kelley. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a staff member at ACC. I played Agamemnon in Iphigenia at ALIS. I was also a carpenter and a scenic artist, and I guess prop designer too.
Yes, all the hats, because that's how we roll. Thank you both for being here. My first question is, what made you say yes? So Simone, what about the script? What made you say yes to this project? And Joe, we'll go to you next with what made you say yes to that audition.
Yeah, I mean, I would say what made me say yes was Marcus McCorder, 100%. I was intrigued. Obviously, he also serves as a board member on my theater company, New Manifest Theater. So I've gotten to know him pretty well over the last 6 months or so through the pandemic. And he told me about ACC, all of the resources, the new space. So I just jumped at the opportunity to get to collaborate and be in this space a little bit. Obviously, it was a challenging time being in the pandemic, but all up for creativity and being creative during these times and collaborating as much as I can with other artists. I will say I'm not actually a huge fan of the classics at all. I'm like very much a new contemporary play person. But I will say if we're going to do any classics, I would rather it be Greek. So I was excited to do this one.
And yeah, for me, I of course, I'm a staff member, and during our fall get together for the rest of the whole semester, we talked about who wanted to do what roles. Of course, I work on carpentry for all of the shows and scenic artistry, and I've really thought about diving into design work, and I've done some set design, and I've always been passionate about props, and so I jumped at the opportunity to do prop design. And as an actor, I actually happened to be in one of the production meetings when I heard that the auditions were still going on. We were looking for some actors, and I had thought about auditioning. It's the middle of the pandemic. There's a lot of stuff going on. I hadn't performed in person for a while. But oh my gosh, I read the script, of course, because I was working on the production team, and I loved it. I love Greek tragedy. I'm a huge comic book nerd, and Greek, the whole myths of Euripides and how they intersect with the Odyssey and the Iliad. It just feels like a big shared comic book universe with all of these crossover characters and this big giant narrative where each play or each story feels like an individual comic book issue. And I think that's super duper fun. And of course, I love the classics too. So I jumped at the opportunity to audition, and super thrilled to be cast.
Cool. I love that. It's like the Greek multiverse.
Exactly.
Awesome. So for both of you, is this your first time being back in the rehearsal room or working on productions since the pandemic? And that's a quick little.
It's not. I feel really grateful to have been able to meet so many people during the pandemic. Honestly, I feel like I've met more people in Austin during the pandemic than prior to the pandemic, which is a little crazy. But I feel like there's some more accessibility, I guess, as fatiguing as Zoom can be. I feel like it's made it so that, quick 30-minute hour conversations of like meeting somebody and getting to know them really quickly has been really helpful. So I've been doing a couple of projects. I've been in the middle of directing a solo show of Octavia Latoy, who's an actress in town, great collaborator of mine. other conversations about like strategic planning for my theater company, I feel like we've really been utilizing this downtime to think strategically about moving forward and, you know, where is a good place for us, but also how to, you know, not recreate the wheel and really create things that are for audiences that we want to cultivate. So I've been really grateful for this downtime and to still stay busy throughout it.
Mm-hmm. And Joe, you've been involved in the other projects at ACC, yes? And
yes, we started up with our first I guess in-person show. We did some radio plays at ACC over the majority of the major lockdown parts of the pandemic. But once we moved to the Highland campus around January, we started getting things ready to begin utilizing our new facilities. And our first show was The Sightless at the end of the summer semester. And yeah, I was on the production team for that one. And then we moved into Lonely Planet, and I also was on the production design team for that production. And I did dabble in Zoom over the 2019 through 2020. There were a lot of experimental companies and some established companies that I wanted to get to know, that I got to. And some of those things are coming into fruition with live theater in the next couple months, which is pretty exciting.
I have different conversations with artists kind of all over the country. And one of the things that I feel like is really, it feels like it's unique to the Austin scene is just like how much more connected that, because things are kind of slowed down, people are able to kind of connect more. There's so many amazing artists here in Austin and so many folks doing the work. So I love hearing that, you know, that was y'all's experience. So how did, well, let me ask a different question before I go to that one. What's your favorite part of the process for this show? Like, what was something that you were like, oh, that's juicy, I like it? Simone?
I mean, I love the collaboration process at all levels. I feel like as a director, that's kind of my like go-to is collaboration. I know that other directors have different points of view where they're very much like, I am the end all be all of like what this is. And I don't know, I just love hearing other people's ideas. I love hearing how we can combine ideas and make them better. I feel like everybody's experience is elevated in that way. So everything from, you know, the production process, getting to hear the designer's inputs about, you know, interpreting my very general idea into actuality is so intriguing to me. I also find the same for actors too, that process of really each individual person bringing their own experience, their own perspective to the role, I think is super important. I really hate micromanaging or like line reading. So I really love to, you know, give space for each person to be an individual artist and to really see that flourish.
Simone, you said it beautifully. I'm not sure if there's much more I can add, because that is the heart of what I love about theater and this process specifically with you and with the production team and with the other actors, was just how incredibly collaborative it was. You mentioned your idea and how the designers came through and built off of it and built this world based off of this idea of like a near future post-apocalyptic, and the costume designer came in with all of these designs and just like nailed what we were all going for. Rachel came in with a set design, and all of it came together so quickly in just a beautiful way. Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, so the concept, and I think you mentioned the costumes, like I was like, oh, look at the costumes, like we're not gonna ignore that we're in the middle of a pandemic and people are wearing masks and we have to wear them too to work together, and integrating that into the show was amazing. So I think it speaks to the collaborative effort that y'all all seem to enjoy so much. So I want to highlight a thing. One of the best parts of one of the things I love about Austin Community College is that you don't have to be a student to work on these productions. What are some of the things you notice as highlights of having that be a part of your process?
I mean, you know, I feel like it brings so many different personalities together, which I really enjoy. I find that sometimes, as much as I love theater, we can be very like inside baseball about it, where people are just like throwing around these terms and like other people are like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, this is a foreign language. And I feel like, specifically Greek, I think also like the classics in general are really coming from a place where they were written for the people, and like getting back to the root of that, the fact that we all can relate to these stories. It doesn't have to be like somebody who's obsessed with theater and obsessed with like the language of it. It doesn't have to be that much, like everybody can do it. And I think that that's really beautiful. I also think, working with somebody like Marty, who this was his first show, he plays the character of Menelaus, and it was just like awesome to even experience that, to be in the room with somebody who's, so eager to learn and to just be a part of this experience. I feel like that brings such a positive energy when a lot of the times it can be like very heady, and like a little too academic for my taste. And I feel like this brings it back to a place of playfulness, having people who are not necessarily like theater people, I guess.
Again, Simone, you said it. I feel exactly the same. There's something so special about having people from like decades apart in age, people from all different points of life, different points of experience in theater, different like another thing about Marty is he's a veteran, and just having somebody with so much different experience really just, I feel like, elevated the process. And I could go on and on about each and every actor and each and every member of the production team and how much they brought to this, and specifically talking about how auditions are open at ACC. It just opens the door for so many people. It is like Austin Community College. It puts that emphasis on community. This is like, it brings the people from the community in an environment where, sort of like you said, there's certain places where it can feel academic, and it doesn't, whether it's an academic institution, or whether it is a theater company that is more focused on doing things a specific way, that can be incredibly intimidating for someone to walk in and just toss an audition in the ring. But when you have a place like Austin Community College that is doing, at this point, we're doing 2 shows a semester with open calls. We're trying to vary the styles of shows and the styles of the direction styles and all of this as much as we can. I feel like it is opening the door for so much opportunity. And Marty is a perfect example of someone who got to come in completely green and walked out having a full theater experience, and there was no gatekeeping, there was no exclusion. It was a fully collaborative process with these people who had varying levels of prior experience, and it's just a beautiful thing to be a part of.
Yeah, as an artist, sometimes you don't grow like working with the same set of people and doing things in the same way. It's really hard for folks to grow within their craft, and theater should, Simone, I love that you mentioned that as far as the classics, like it is for the people. It should be accessible, and I love that. That's like a very magical thing, I think, that happens at ACC, because you can be a veteran of this field, but how are you still growing with your craft? And if we're not still learning, then, what are we doing? So I love hearing you guys say that. What is something, Simone, and this is for you too, Joe, something that you hope people kind of walk away after watching this production? With something, and you can think on that for a second. And for everyone watching this right now, if you haven't already, please head over to our digital green room on YouTube and check it out, because it is available now. And yeah, Simone or Joe, you can also go first if you'd like.
I'm gonna let Joe go first this time.
Okay. I think I do kind of have a leg up, because I performed in it, so I feel like I had to really think about I mean, especially since it came out, I don't know, and showing it to people. I don't know. There's this thought of what does this. It's a very, very tragic show, and the character I play makes a lot of major mistakes, and does them with his full chest. And it's one of those things that, like, I don't know. I think the best way I can describe it is I would love people to walk away from this looking at the parallels between this Greek tragedy and what can very easily happen today, where you make a mistake and you feel pressured by whether it's society or whether it's your family or whether it's your job or the reality you find yourself in, trapped, and you know what is right. The world is telling you that something else is right, and there are times that you just need to trust yourself. And I think the character of Agamemnon is a prime example of not trusting him. So he knew the right thing to do, and he chose to not do it for society, for all of the war effort, for his friends, for his peers. Like, he chose to do the wrong thing for what he thought were the right reasons, and there is no right reason to do the wrong thing. And I think there are a lot of parallels to this. We live in a society where things are moving so quickly. It is so easy to get lost, and it is so easy to just kind of go with the flow and let the world determine your choices. Where you are an individual, and you get to make your choices, and you get to carve your future. And every individual person, I think that's another thing too, is every person in the show makes deliberate choices that change the course of history. These individuals make choices that change history. And I think that's so important.
Well, I definitely feel called out about it. But I mean, I love it. Goes just back to what you were saying, Simone, is like, it's easy, especially in theater. Like, you'll hear a title, you'll think like, oh, it's a classic. Oh, this has nothing to do with me. Or you think it's not applicable. And these themes that humanity keep facing, clearly we're facing them today, speak to why this work is so important. Yeah, Simone, do you want to add to that, say anything?
Yeah, I mean, I totally co-sign on everything that Joe is saying. And I think specifically this story, like, what was so intriguing to me is how I found that it was really easy to be inspired by our current climate, and apply that to this Greek tragedy. As unfortunate as that feels, I also think, having the real conversation about what we are choosing to put above just general humanity is something that's very interesting to me, because it just continues to happen, whether that's social society, cultural society, religious society, whatever you're trying to prioritize over just general humanity, I think is a really intriguing conversation to have. And it also does, put a mirror up to our day-to-day and what we're doing. And I feel like, as intentional as you can be moving forward and really, analyzing your choices and the reactions, the cause and effect that happens, is something that we should all take ownership in. We're all a part of the problem, quite honestly, and we could all be doing better. And I think that this Greek tragedy is maybe an extreme version, but I also would hesitate to say that it's that extreme. Just choose a place, and I'm sure there's an equivalent story happening, unfortunately. But it's also, putting that in the forefront and knowing, like, at least from my point of view, I always feel like identifying the problem is the first step, and then coming up with creative solutions so that we don't have to, relive history, is always ideal.
So when we're talking about accessibility and people being able to see the work, we're not able to be in theaters the way, of course, we want to, and we don't know how long that's going to last. I love that, you know, ACC is right there helping lead the charge along with other artists here in Austin on how we share stories. How do we share the work that we're doing? Not being able to have an audience, how did that affect your work, your part in this process?
I'll let Joe speak to that as an actor in it, because I'm sure that experience was palpable.
Mhm.
Luckily, with a tragedy, there's less of a direct it's less in your face that an audience isn't there when you're doing a comedy and they're not laughing, or I feel like in a comedy the laughter really carries the pace, and so I have not been in a comedy without an audience, so I can't really attest to how that would work out. I will say though, we talk about the magic of theater, and we talk about how different rehearsal is than a performance. We talk about these things, but it is something entirely different to do the full show with lights, sound, and with like to do the show full out without that magic, that energy. There's like I said, we artists talk about it. We talk about that magic, but it is one of those things that it can be less tangible, and given the current circumstances, it was thrown into stark relief, what it feels like to not have that connection, that direct connection. And what's really funny is, I guess funny isn't the right word. I got to watch Iphigenia with some of my family members on TV together, and I could feel the connection in that room to what was going on in front of them. So it's still there. It still is gonna happen, and it definitely, that magic is still there. It is really weird to not feel it in the same way on the stage when you're saying the words with the lights on you and the costume and the makeup and all that stuff, and that feeling isn't quite there in the way that it would be should the house be filled with audience members.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I feel like as a director, I think a lot about audience, like where the audience placement is, especially as it has to do with blocking, with the set. I find that like intimate direction is normally my bread and butter. Like how involved can I make the audience feel? And I feel like that's something that's unfortunate, I think, in this time, is that I can't kind of, craft or cultivate that experience. Going back to talking about community, like I do feel like audience is 100% a part of that for theater, especially for live theater. Having the audience, even, hearing them breathe in the same room with you is like a very tangible feeling, I think, for all of us. And as artists, I think that like fuels a certain kind of performance energy. And I think the cast did a great job. I feel like also having, the designers in the room watching was like as close to an audience as we could possibly get. So I'm really grateful that we at least had like, production team in the seats watching as an audience. Because I feel like that was necessary. I don't feel like it would have been as successful if like nobody was actually watching,
In an empty room.
yeah, that would definitely feel empty for sure. But, things like people not being able to experience that set in person, experience all of the design aspects in person is something that I'll always like kind of have like a sad piece of my heart about. But going back to accessibility, I hope that this is an aspect of the pandemic, being creative in this way, that stays for a while, because I feel like sorry, I have dogs in the background, but I feel like the accessibility is extremely important, especially as theater continues to be inaccessible, really expensive to go to. I feel like it's extremely necessary to keep that portion of accessibility by streaming things.
Mhm. Well, I'm glad to see that ACC, the drama department, that they are continuing to do work when we talk about that shared knowledge between intergenerational, when we start talking about, you know, what that actually does. It actually is, I think, I'm an old school theater artist or whatever, but this is the way you get me to think about film. And this is the way that you get me to think about my craft in this other way that as we wait for theaters to open is a wonderful gift to the students and to the community that come in and have these experiences, because now you're expanding your resume in a different way. When we talk about multiple streams of income and being able to sustain yourself, as all of us are always trying to figure out. I love that ACC kept going, because it's, you know, it's giving us an opportunity to learn these other skills, and we can be clear about how it doesn't work with our craft in this one particular way, but it also is this other wonderful gift. And I think that until we're fully open and fully operational as artists, considering these dabblings of other, these multiple hat wearing things, it's a beautiful thing. I also wanted to ask you, and this may be more of a, well, no, it's for both of you. Knowing that it was going to have to be filmed, did that do a different thing for how you engaged with your craft? Like, does that come up at the end of the process? Did y'all talk about it during the process? Like, how do we go from being theater artists to all of a sudden, oh, there's a camera? How do you, is that, how does that get integrated into the work?
I mean, I will say at the very, very beginning of this process, I had my fingers crossed that we could have people in person, that we could do this outside in like the atrium area of ACC, which is also beautiful, a beautiful space. And then quickly with the Delta variant, I was just like, gotta call it. It's definitely going to be streamed and no audiences. So I think, making that call very early on was helpful to the design process, and really needed so that everybody could be successful in doing their designs for the show, knowing what medium we were going to be in. From like a blocking director point of view, other than that, like how I engage with actors, I don't personally think that streaming has a ton to do with it. I feel like if anything, at least from my point of view, I think it's the job of the camera to capture what is live theater, not for live theater to craft itself into the medium of being filmed. I think I feel really strongly about that, but I'm also like such a fan of like, the National Theater Live series. I've seen so many of those. So to see like what can be done, what has been done to film shows and really bring in the essence of this being live, is something that I think Carlos did just a great job of executing. And I think, with every job, he's like learning and also is super communicative with me about like what I'm looking for out of the filming of it. So I was really grateful for that collaboration too.
Ding, 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 collaboration. Yeah, yeah, awesome. Because it came on, you hear the music, I leaned in. It like I felt like it in a beautiful way. And I think Joe, you said this earlier. It somehow does the thing, which means if we just keep saying yes and showing up for the work does its thing. Joe, did you want to add to that?
I think Simone really nailed it. And it's wonderful coming from the mouth of the director, because what I would say is the direction helped, like as on the production team and as an actor, having the director treat the process as we are doing it live, while taking the logistic accountability for what's actually going to end up happening and taking care of all the logistics. When it came to the rehearsal process and execution, felt like we were doing a live show, and it really was up to the what was it, 5 or so cameras to pick up what we were doing. And that was another part of the collaborative process. And as far as the actors and the performance and the rehearsal process went, it was the first time I'd done something like that in person since like 2019. And it really, like, wow, I rehearsed a show and performed a show in person. I did that. And all of us did do that, even though there was no audience there. And so yeah, that whole process felt like we were doing a live show, and then cameras came in instead of audience.
Yeah. Well, y'all did, and it's beautiful. I am gonna ask y'all one last little question, and it's a tough question to ask because it's not done to any, there's like no shade on any other theater company that's in Austin. The space crisis that Austin stumbled into, and we're going back, this is 2015, 2016, lots of theaters losing space, and the landscape of where we as artists have been able to perform has had its challenges before the pandemic. So having space is a thing. But ACC and this new facility and being able to come here, I would love for you to share, if you have something to share, what was something that you really appreciated being able to have access to, and how, you know, having such fly digs, like if you, it's like you have like all the good spices. So if you just have anything to share about this new amazing facility that ACC is making available to its students and to the community, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like not only the people involved, I will say, I don't think I've ever felt as supported as a director, collaborator in a process as I have in this one. And I give a lot of credit to Marcus because I feel like, you know, I've never had as detailed of a production schedule. I've never had as intentional of collaborative production meetings that were very, you know, focused. We weren't using like excess time, or there wasn't like a lot of time for drama, I guess, to incite, which happens in almost every production, to be honest. I think it's, you know, theater people, we're all dramatic, but I just thought this was such a positive experience. And I think that, you know, the facility itself is just like the icing on top of a very put together supportive team. I also just want to like highlight the initiative of being a green theater that ACC has taken. I feel like that is something that all theaters can learn from. And goes back to our conversation before about the show itself and like how we can all be doing better. I really hope that from this pandemic, people are really taking notes about how we can move forward in a more sustainable way, which I do feel like ACC is taking those notes and actively implementing action towards a better theater making process. But honestly, I think all theaters can learn from this, and providing as much information as possible to all of their artists involved, budgets, how much people are getting paid to do things. Like that's all a very transparent process, probably the most transparent process that I've been in. And I feel like honestly, as a theater maker, knowing how much it costs to do things is extremely essential, because I think that artists have the ability to dream big and not necessarily know the budget it takes to execute those big dreams. And I feel like we can all learn and grow by knowing exactly how we can do things, but also know how we can collaborate, how we can reuse things, not recreate the wheel when we don't have to. So I think, you know, all of this has been such an honor to work with ACC. I know that I'm taking notes into my next processes. And I hope other people do too. I hope other people come and see shows here too, because it's just a gorgeous space.
I don't know if I have too much to add. That's I like I could go on and on about my coworkers, the faculty and staff of ACC Drama Department, and really ACC as a whole is just, we really care about each other, and we really care about what we're doing, and we really care about the community. We really care about our students. And I think Simone used the word transparency, and I think that is just, oh man, it is so important when it comes to connecting our world to our craft and to our job and to our art. And I think being transparent about timelines, budgets, and the reality. I think all of that, and being in the same room and communicating, and not and keeping the drama out of it, because there's no room and there's no reason for there to be any ego or any politics or anything like that when it comes to collaborating and coming together to put together a huge development with dozens and dozens of people who are putting everything that they have at this moment. Transparency is just, it is common decency, and it feels like a warm hug when you know all of the information, and you know people aren't keeping things from you, and they aren't trying to mislead you or trying to use you. Man, that is just, it is such a terrible thing to want to help and be used. And that is not something that I've ever experienced with ACC. And it is just in the same vein we were talking about the emphasis on community and bringing in people, making this a safe space. And I think that transparency is a huge part of that. And making sure that anybody with any amount of experience can come in and let their art just thrive.
I'm gonna get in my feelings. I love y'all's responses. I love being able to talk to y'all today. Those are the very reasons that I am going back to school. And where am I going to go? I'm going to ACC. And why am I doing? I mean, and because it is that, and doing the work when you're supported, doing the work when everyone's making the choice to be their best selves and figure out how we can keep what has worked in our field for so long and find ways to make it better, and involve the community. It's all just at the core of what makes ACC and the drama department so special. And so I'm like, yes, and that's why I'll be starting in the spring, and I look forward to having auditions with my colleagues like at ACC and doing the work. There are a lot of things wrong in theater, but I love that ACC is getting it right. And I love that you two in this conversation just kind of reaffirm that for us. Thank you both so much for taking the time to chat with me today. I look forward to, what are you working on next? What are you working on next? Does anybody want to say anything?
Sure.
Yeah.
People can check out New Manifest Theater, all things New Manifest Theater. We'll be putting out our podcast and announcing our 2022 season soon, and hopefully having auditions in January for our first production back. Also, like I said earlier, I'm directing Octavia Latoy's solo show, I See You, You Are Seen. That should be in April, May time at the Vortex. And then check out Ground Floor next December. We're doing Memphis. Super excited.
Awesome. And Joe, what you got next? What's going on?
So ACC is gearing up for our next show, what is looking to be our first in-person show in the new facilities. Everybody by Brandon Jacob Jenkins. It's a very cool show with a cast lottery system where each actor draws from a hat which role they're going to play that night. And so all of these actors learn a bunch of different roles. And we've already started production meetings, and we've started talking about the collaborative design process. And this is amazing. And I think something about this show specifically that I'm so excited about is the culture and the individuality that our design team is really bringing from their own personal lives, and putting that into what could very easily be the same show that has been done before. We're not doing a lottery, we're doing the Loteria cards. And it's just, it feels like it is something we are creating here together in this space, using ourselves and each other for inspiration. And it's just, I cannot wait till the actors come in and and the audience comes in, and it's going to be a blast.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. I too will be looking forward to this show. And thank you all for joining us today. And everybody have a nice evening. See you at the theater soon. Bye, y'all.
Thanks, Florinda.